I walked briskly down the dimly lit street, my heart beating fast with every step. The party I had just left was a blur of flashing lights and loud music, but now the silence of the night was deafening. The only sound was the pounding of my own footsteps against the pavement. As I turned the corner onto my street, I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. I turned around, but there was no one there. I shrugged it off as my imagination and continued walking. But then, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around again, but still, there was no one there. My heart rate began to quicken as I picked up my pace. Suddenly, I heard a voice whisper my name. I know it's you," the voice said. I spun around, but there was no one there. I started to run, but I felt something brush against my arm. I turned to see a shadowy figure disappearing into the darkness. My heart pounding, I reached for my phone to call for help. But then, I saw a text message from my crush, the one I had been thinking about all night. It read, "I know you've been avoiding me, but I just had to see you." Suddenly, it all made sense. My crush had been following me all night, stalking me like a predator. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I realized that the person I had been fantasizing about was the one who was now stalking me. I broke into a sprint, desperate to get away from my crush's haunting presence. But every time I turned around, I could feel their eyes on me, watching me from the shadows. I don't know how long I ran for, but eventually, I made it home. As I locked the door behind me, I could feel my heart still racing, my mind filled with the terror of what had just happened. From that day on, I knew that I could never look at my crush in the same way again. They were no longer the object of my affection, but a source of fear and horror, lurking in the shadows and watching my every move. For the next few days, I was constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at every sound and feeling like I was being watched. I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head, that my crush couldn't possibly be stalking me. But then, I started receiving strange messages on social media. Messages that were vaguely threatening, telling me that my crush knew where I lived and that they were always watching me. My heart sank as I realized that my worst fears had come true. My crush was indeed stalking me. I tried to block them on social media, but they just made new accounts and continued to send me messages. They knew everything about me, where I worked, where I went to school, even the names of my friends and family members. It was as if they had been obsessively researching me for months. I felt trapped and helpless, like I was being slowly suffocated by the constant surveillance. I couldn't tell anyone about what was happening, because who would believe me? My crush was the perfect, charming person that everyone loved. How could they possibly be capable of something so sinister? One night, as I was lying in bed, I heard a tapping sound coming from outside my window. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I slowly got up and tiptoed towards the window, trying to see who or what was making the noise. As I peered through the curtains, I saw a figure standing in the darkness, their eyes fixed on me. It was my crush, their face twisted in a menacing grin. I screamed and stumbled backwards, tripping over my own feet and falling to the floor. I scrambled to my feet and ran to the door, locking it behind me as I sobbed uncontrollably. From that moment on, I knew that I had to take drastic action. I went to the police and told them everything, showing them the messages and telling them about the night my crush had stalked me outside my window. It wasn't easy, but eventually, my crush was arrested and charged with stalking and harassment. It was a long, grueling process, but finally, I could breathe a little easier knowing that I was safe. But even now, years later, I still have nightmares about that time in my life. The fear and paranoia that consumed me during those months have never fully left me, and I still feel like I'm being watched sometimes. I learned a valuable lesson that love and obsession can be two sides of the same coin, and that sometimes, the people we think we know and trust the most can turn out to be the most dangerous of all. As time passed, the haunting only grew worse. I couldn't escape my crush's ghostly presence no matter where I went, and the whispers in my ear became more and more frequent. But it wasn't just the whispers that frightened me. Objects would move on their own, and I would catch glimpses of my crush's ghostly figure out of the corner of my eye. Sometimes, I would wake up in the middle of the night to find them standing at the foot of my bed, staring down at me with their black, empty eyes. I tried to seek help from the paranormal community, but no one would believe me. They said that it was just my imagination, that I was still traumatized from the stalking incident. But I knew the truth, my crush's ghost was still stalking me, still haunting me. One night, I woke up to find my crush's ghostly figure standing over me, their hand reaching out to touch my face. This time, it wasn't just a passing through my cheek, their hand was cold and solid, and it gripped my face with an otherworldly strength. I screamed and thrashed around, trying to get free, but it was no use. The ghostly figure held me down, their black eyes boring into mine as they whispered in my ear. "I will never let you go," they said. "You belong to me now, in life and death." I knew then that I was trapped, that my crush's ghostly presence would haunt me for the rest of my life. I tried to come to terms with it, but the fear and paranoia consumed me, eating away at my sanity until there was nothing left. In the end, I succumbed to the horror. I stopped leaving my apartment, stopped eating or sleeping or even showering. I was consumed by my crush's ghostly presence, trapped forever in a world of terror and despair. And even now, as I sit alone in my apartment, I can feel their ghostly figure looming over me, watching and waiting for me to break. I know that I will never escape the horror that they have inflicted upon me, that I will be forever stalked by my crush, even in death. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, but the haunting only intensified. My crush's ghostly presence had taken over my life completely, leaving me with no escape from the terror that consumed me. The whispers in my ear had turned into full-blown conversations, and I found myself talking to my crush's ghost as if it were a real person. It was as if they had never left, as if they were still alive and with me, haunting me every step of the way. The ghostly figure that I had once feared so much had become a constant companion, following me around the apartment and watching me with its empty, black eyes. It was as if my crush's ghost was a part of me now, a part of my very being. But it wasn't just my crush's ghost that was haunting me. Other ghosts had begun to appear as well, the spirits of past tenants, the victims of unsolved murders, and even the ghosts of my own family members. They would appear to me in the middle of the night, their voices echoing through the apartment as they begged me for help, for salvation from their own eternal torments. It was as if my apartment had become a portal to the afterlife, a place where ghosts could come and go as they pleased. And then, one night, something even more terrifying happened. My crush's ghostly figure appeared to me, but this time it was different. It was as if they had taken on a physical form, as if they had become corporeal once again. The ghostly figure approached me, its hands reaching out to grab me, and I felt its icy touch on my skin. It was as if my crush's ghost had become real again, and they were intent on taking me with them to the afterlife. I tried to fight back, but it was no use. The ghostly figure was too strong, too powerful, and it dragged me towards the door, towards the portal to the afterlife. As I was pulled towards the door, I could hear the other ghosts screaming in terror, begging me not to go. But it was too late, I was already being pulled into the afterlife, into a world of eternal torment and horror. And even now, as I wander the afterlife, I can feel my crush's ghostly presence all around me, stalking me and haunting me for all eternity. I am trapped here, forever haunted by the ghosts of my past and the terrors that I can never escape. As I was pulled into the afterlife, everything around me became dark and silent. The only sound was the beating of my own heart, and the only thing I could see was the ghostly figure of my crush, still dragging me towards the unknown. I tried to scream, but my voice was lost in the abyss. The ghostly figure was dragging me closer and closer to the portal, and I knew that once I crossed over, there was no going back. Just as I thought it was over, the ghostly figure suddenly stopped. It turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of recognition in its black, empty eyes. "You belong to me," my crush's ghostly voice echoed through the void. "But I don't want to share you with the others." Suddenly, I was surrounded by other ghostly figures, all clamoring for my attention. They reached out to me, their faces twisted in agony and despair, and I knew that I was in the presence of the damned. The ghosts started to pull at me, their ethereal hands tearing at my clothes and skin. They were trying to drag me away from my crush's ghost, to claim me for their own. In the chaos, I caught a glimpse of a light, shining faintly in the distance. It was the portal, the only way out of this nightmare. With all my might, I broke free from the ghost's grasp and ran towards the light. My crush's ghostly figure followed close behind, its footsteps echoing through the void. As I got closer to the portal, the ghosts grew more desperate. They reached out to me with all their strength, trying to drag me back into the abyss. But I kept running, until I finally reached the portal. I could feel the ghostly figures closing in, their cold hands brushing against my skin. With one final push, I plunged through the portal and landed on the other side. I was back in the mortal world, safe and sound. But as I looked around, I realized that the ghosts had followed me through the portal. They were all around me, watching and waiting, still trying to claim me for their own. And in the distance, I could see my crush's ghostly figure, still stalking me, still haunting me. I knew then that there was no escaping the horrors that I had unleashed, that I would be forever haunted by the ghosts of my past. As the ghostly figures closed in on me, I felt a sudden jolt of electricity run through my body. It was as if the very air around me had come alive, crackling with energy. The ghostly figures recoiled in horror, their twisted faces contorted in agony. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the energy dissipated, leaving me standing there alone. But I was not alone for long. From the shadows emerged a figure, one that I recognized all too well. It was my crush, alive and well. I stood there, stunned, as my crush explained what had really happened that fateful night. It turned out that they had never died in the car accident, it had all been an elaborate ruse to get me to notice them. My crush had faked their own death, hoping that I would come to their rescue and realize how much they meant to me. But their plan had gone horribly wrong, and now they were here to make things right. As I tried to process this shocking revelation, my crush's ghostly figure reappeared. It was angry, furious that its plan had been exposed, and it was intent on taking revenge. The two figures clashed in a battle of wills, each one fighting for control of my soul. I was caught in the middle, helpless and terrified. In the end, it was my crush who emerged victorious. They banished the ghostly figure back to the afterlife, and in doing so, they finally put an end to the haunting that had consumed my life. But as I looked into my crush's eyes, I realized that things were not as they seemed. There was a darkness there, a twisted desire that had driven them to such extremes. I had escaped the haunting, but I had unwittingly traded one nightmare for another. I was trapped, once again, in a world of terror and uncertainty, haunted by the knowledge of what my crush was truly capable of. And the weeks that followed, my crush's behavior grew more erratic and unpredictable. They became possessive and jealous, demanding my attention at all times and lashing out at anyone who dared to come near me. I knew that something was wrong, that my crush's obsession had taken a dark and dangerous turn. But I was too scared to confront them, too afraid of what they might do. And then, one day, it all came to a head. My crush had cornered me in a dark alley, their eyes wild and their voice trembling with rage. "I did it all for you," they screamed, brandishing a knife. "I killed for you, and you never even noticed me." I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest, as my crush advanced on me. But just as they were about to strike, a blinding light filled the alleyway. I shielded my eyes, and when I looked back, my crush was gone. In their place stood a figure, one that I recognized all too well. It was the ghostly figure of my crush, back from the afterlife. The ghostly figure looked at me, its eyes empty and black, and then it vanished into thin air. And that was the end of it. My crush was gone, taken by the ghostly figure that had haunted me for so long. I was left alone, standing in the dark alley, wondering if any of it had ever been real. As I turned to leave, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I turned around, and there was my crush, alive and well, holding out their hand. "Let's go home," they said, their eyes twinkling with mischief. And so I took their hand, and we walked away, leaving the darkness behind us. But I knew, deep down, that the haunting was not over, that the ghostly figure would always be there, watching and waiting, ready to strike at any moment. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to hit the like button and consider subscribing to our channel for more great content. Your support helps us continue to create and share valuable information with you. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.